have great ideas, that have great founders.
But we have two stories right now, scale up and grow.
Welcome to the D3 Mission Log podcast. This is a series of video and podcast interviews we've been doing together to explore the journey that we're taking to build Third Derivative, the world's largest climate tech accelerator. And I'm joined by Bryan each week to explain what he's been doing with his team to advance the most innovative, cool companies that we can, and how building this huge accelerator with an amazing ecosystem of corporate and investor partners can accelerate our trajectory towards solution of this climate crisis, which is what the Third Derivative is all about. Bryan, how are you? And what's the lesson or story we're going to talk about this week?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well, Danny. Thanks for asking. Thought with this being the end of our first season, our last episode here, thought it might be a good chance for us, instead of focusing on a lesson per se, just taking a look at some of the numbers that tell a bit of a story in and of themselves about what we've been doing, what we've been accomplishing so far, and laying a foundation for what we hope to accomplish even more, better, faster, stronger in future.
Results, in fact, like you want to tell us what you got so far. I mean, it's only 3 months since we launched, so how much could there be in terms of numbers?
Yeah, so I don't want to bury the lead here. We're pretty excited about the way some of these intermediate results are already starting to show up. If you recall, Danny, some of the top level numbers for us, we've built a coalition of corporate partners with about $3 trillion US in market cap behind them. We've built a coalition of VC investor partners with about $1 billion US of investable assets. But now we have the opportunity, it's not hypothetical anymore. We have the opportunity to see, well, how much of that kind of capital and resources are we really starting to mobilize and put to task here? And we were doing the maths the other day. And so far, in the 3 months since we've launched, we've mobilized about $28 million US of committed capital. About
additional, sorry to interrupt you, but $28 million additional to the money we put into the companies as part of joining the accelerator.
So this is actually the combined maths for money that's been contributed to run our accelerator, commitments from our investors and how much they intend to invest, and our own investment vehicle that we raised to make direct investments together. You add that all up. So right now, kind of out of the gate, we've got about $28 million committed. Although we've, even only 3 months in, we've had $4.5 million invested directly into the startups already between, our investment fund and our VC investor partners as well. So we want to add multiple zeros to that, but that's not a bad start for kind of right out of the gate. You may recall, Danny, that we had 47 startups that we admitted into the cohort. Another number is one startup that we had to kind of uninvite out of the cohort. We're really focused on the second and third valley of death, and we had a relatively stringent set of minimum requirements for startups to participate. And one of the startups that we originally admitted turned out not to be able to kind of meet that minimum threshold. So we mutually agreed that they would kind of step out of the cohort, but they're still working on really interesting IP, and we're trying to think through other complementary interventions that we might introduce to help startups like them with really cool IP propel themselves forward in the commercialization chain.
Critical point there, which I may just draw out and interrupt you again, for the listeners that are sort of running their own accelerators and learning from this experience. Serving the rejected is one of the most important things we can do. It is about your cohort, and you become devoted to and dedicated to serving them. But we've also got to work out, how do we help these companies that don't quite fit the criteria, or whatever the case was here, but have great ideas, have great founders, are teams we want to support to succeed as well. And there are tools and tricks and ways we can do that without having them in the cohort. So good on you for taking care of number 47. But the 46 that remain, tell us about what you've done for them.
Yeah, so of those 46, 34 of them received direct investments from us, from our investment vehicle. 17 of them received direct investments from one of our VC or corporate venture capital partners, which is pretty cool. They're already establishing then relationships that will develop, hopefully, with a much higher likelihood of follow-on funding. 8 startups have received more investment than our kind of standard $100,000 deal. 3 of those, it was because they had multiple VC partners who wanted to invest in them. And so they just kind of stacked their investments on. And 5 of those were actually kind of follow-on investments. So we built this model where with an 18-month kind of acceleration program, and our thesis that by the end of 18 months, we might start seeing some follow-on investments. And we've really already seen 5 where a VC has transacted a separate financial transaction, an investment in one of these startups that's above and beyond our basic convertible note that they get as part of entry into the program.
Wow, that's awesome. That's accelerated access to capital and accelerated success so far in the journey of the startups. What other magic moments have you seen or created through this ecosystem approach?
Yeah, so our big purpose at the end of the day, investment is a means to an end, not the end in of itself. But we think one of the really big means to ends is engagement between the startups and the corporates, as whether the corporates are customers, whether they're pilot development partners, or eventually even investors and acquirers themselves. And here we are 3 months in, and we already have 7 active engagements between startups and our corporates. In a couple of cases, this have actually led to, I would say, some validation of this deeply integrated model. We have 2 stories, and I can't share the names yet because these are still confidential, but we have 2 stories right now in which a startup with a very complex technology that would have been really hard to invest in, just because it's really hard to diligence, it's really hard to kind of price in the risk associated with this kind of really hard tech, had conversations through our process with corporates who showed a lot of interest in their technologies as customers. And we had VC investors sitting in on those conversations as well, and were so kind of motivated by the demand or the market pull they could see by the corporates that they decided to step in and invest. So kind of bringing those startups into the program and kind of building this virtual cycle between the startups and the investors and the corporates together. And we believe pretty firmly that those startups would not have had a path forward without this kind of integrated approach. So that's really neat for us to see. And we're getting really positive feedback from the founders for those types of magic moments that really wouldn't be possible elsewhere.
Yeah, amazing. Any other numbers you want to share or thoughts as we sort of round this 10-week series out?
I'd say that's pretty good on the numbers. Again, these are very early and intermediate numbers, but they're by and large much farther, much faster than we expected to be at this point. Just 3 months in, while we're still kind of feeling our way around and building the rocket ship as we fly it here. So we're cautiously encouraged, but of course, also we try to have the humility to recognize how much more we still have to learn.
But very impressive. Good start. Yay, team. Go D3. Okay, let's do the highlight company of the week. We always love to celebrate one of the startups in the third derivative.
Yeah, so shout out this week to a Californian long duration storage company called Antora Energy. Pretty cool. They store thermal energy in really inexpensive raw materials and then convert the heat back to electricity via a really high efficiency thermo photovoltaic process, which is kind of a neat way to store up energy that can be deployed. We're recording this in March. It's only been a couple of weeks since the Texas power outages. Finding ways to store energy and dispatch it on a moment's notice when it's needed is increasingly prevalent in the public mind. One of the challenges with that is that many of the techniques that are out there are really expensive, and Antora believes using this high efficiency and low cost materials that they can actually deliver less than $10 per kilowatt hour, which is huge for the space of long duration storage. And we especially want to target them right now because they just received a $3 million grant from the California Energy Commission. So more charge in their batteries to scale up and grow.
Awesome. Well, that's a great way to wrap episode 10 of the D3 mission log. And thanks to our listeners. And thanks, Bryan, for explaining so much about how you've taken the team on the journey to build and create this amazing vehicle to deliver together this experience for startups to help them succeed, deliver climate solutions.
Yeah, cheers, Danny. This is a lot of fun. We're having a lot of fun doing this, but it's great to be able to share out a little bit about what we're learning. So if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button down there. If you're listening to us on a podcast, please like us, please rate us, and stay tuned. We've wrapped up our first season here, but this is not the end. This is just the beginning. So we'll be launching season 2 here pretty shortly. Keen to share as rapidly as we're going. I can't imagine the new lessons we'll be learning as we get more into the thick of things.